Here's a story. I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. I hope either you don't remember it or you don't. This is a story from the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was Chacham Yosef Chaim. He was in Babylon. He lived in Babylon. Like he passed away like 100 years ago. 100 years ago. My wife's he was the Moel, the one who circumcised my wife's father. My wife comes from Iraqi Jews. My wife's father. He was there. Anyway, Ben Ish Chai, the Chacham Ish Chai. I had a picture of him. Where's the picture? I don't know. Anyway, beautiful face, you see. So here's a story from the Ben Ish Chai. Chacham Yosef Chaim is called. Family is Chaim. Once there was a king, a royal, majestic, powerful king. And he was getting old, and he decided that he wanted to build some sort of a monument or building or whatever, statue or something, that would make his name eternal. He wanted this building to stand forever, so everybody would remember him. Remember him. So how do you make a building stand to withstand the vicissitudes of time and wind and stuff like that, rain? So he got his wise man together, his wise men, and they all advised him that if you can find an elder Jewish woman that gave birth to a child in her old age, her only child in her old age, then and slaughter that child, and then his blood will put his blood on the foundation, and then the building will last forever. So the king said, "Okay, it seems a little severe, but if that'll make my name eternal, then I'm willing to do it." So they looked around the whole entire kingdom of Baghdad or wherever it was, and they found, sure enough, a Jewish woman that at the age of 55, she gave birth to a child. And here's her child, 5 years old. They bring her with all this pomp and ceremony, standing in front of the king, and they gave her wreaths of gold and presents and things like that. And the king sitting on his royal throne, he's standing in front of this the foundation that they want to build for this big obelisk or whatever they want to build, and he says, "My dear woman, you have been chosen from all of my kingdom to make my name eternal. To make my name eternal. My wise men have told me that if I take the only child of an elderly Jewish woman and slaughter him and put his blood, that it will make it eternal." And that's what I wanted. So the woman said, "Your Majesty, I am very honored and pleased to be at the service of the king and to help the king whatever possible way, but I just have one little comment to make." And the king said, "Of course, a woman that's willing to give up her only child in her old age, what is it? Maybe your wise men are wrong. Maybe they're not so wise." So the wise men are looking at each other. It's an old lady. The king said, "Well, what do you mean? What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I want to ask them 3 questions. If they can answer these 3 questions properly, then I'll admit that they're wise, and I'll willingly give my son to the whatever the king wants to do. But if they can't answer the questions, then I would advise the king to find himself other advisors." So the king said, "Do you agree?" They said, "Of course we would." What kind of old lady? So she said, "Okay, 3 questions. First question, what is the sweetest thing in the world? Second question, what is the lightest thing in the world? The least heavy thing in the world, the lightest thing in the world. Right? Easiest thing to carry, lightest thing. And the third question, what is the hardest thing in the world?" Hardest thing in the world. So the wise men didn't have to really, to take much time deliberation. So they talked to each other and they were sort of laughing. One of them stood and the king said, "Do you have your answer?" "Yes, Your Majesty, we have the answer. Let's just get this thing over with." He said, the sweetest thing in the world is honey. And especially there's honey that comes from this specific place that the honey is really sweet over there. That is the sweetest honey in the world. That's the son is. Good. The whole crowd claps. It said, and what is the lightest thing in the world? The lightest thing in the world is a feather. A feather. A person has a feather. He can carry the feather. There's no effort whatsoever. And what is the hardest thing in the world? This woman probably doesn't know, but the hardest thing in the world is a diamond. Diamonds, you can take it, hit it with a hammer, it won't break. Diamonds are very, very hard. They're the hardest thing in the world, harder than iron. And that's it. Now let's carry on with the ceremony. The king said, all right, they've answered your questions. She said, but they answered wrong. They gave the wrong answers. They gave stupid answers. The king says, what do you mean? What are the answers? So she said, the sweetest thing in the world is a mother's milk to her baby. The baby, no matter how hungry it is, it won't eat honey, it won't eat anything. Mother's milk is the sweetest thing. A child wants his mother's milk more than anybody wants honey, that bears want honey, whatever. That's the sweetest thing in the world. What's the lightest thing in the world? The lightest thing in the world is a baby in the arms of her mother, of the child's mother. A feather, you see a feather, you put off the feather, it bothers you, get rid of it. A baby, the mother will never get rid of her baby. She'll always hold on to her baby. It's the lightest thing in the world. And what's the hardest thing in the world? The hardest thing in the world is when you take the only child of a Jewish mother and you want to slaughter it in front of her eyes. That's the hardest thing in the world. The king said, bravo, wise man, find another job. I have job really working in the factory. I need some people over there. End of the Ben Ish Chai beautiful story.